Welcome to another exciting episode of Be Different Podcast. I'm your host, Nekesa Esther, and today I have with me, drum rolls please, Nyambura of OK Kiasi.
Hey,
I got it right.
Yes, you got it right.
Nyambura, please introduce yourself.
My name is Nyambura. I am 1/3 of OK Kiasi, which is a podcast that I have with my sisters. In my day-to-day, I am a marketing and brand consultant. And yeah, I love training and teaching people, inspiring people to have new thoughts or distilling complex ideas into simpler ones. So any way I can do that makes me happy. And I'm so happy to be here also. I'm so excited. I'm glad we did this.
I know, right? Guys, what I'm not saying is we were with Nyambura in high school,
Yes,
right?
we were.
So, oh my God. Okay, Nyambura, I think you need to go first. I do not have the right words to tell this.
Yes.
But let's first start with your... What are you reading? I've listened to OK Kiasi, so I know they usually do the how's your week, what are you reading, and what are you watching. So I want you to tell us what you're reading and what you're watching.
So, wow. Okay, so on Spin the Wheel, we usually only do one, but today I'll tell you both. So what I'm reading at the moment is... it's called The First Woman. I think she's called Nansubuga. It's an African author, a novel. I haven't, to be honest, I'm like maybe on page 1. It's my book for March. This year I was determined to read a book every month. And I have 2 friends who keep me accountable as well. So that's what I'm reading.
The First Woman.
The First Woman.
Nice.
And what I'm watching... To be honest, I haven't been doing so much watching. So in terms of shows, I haven't watched. But what I watch religiously is a lot of Kenyan YouTube.
Oh, wow.
So I love Mamito and Wamere, Wakanjo, and the Joyride podcast is what I watched last night.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's... I've been finding I want more bite-sized, but also local content in what I'm watching. So that's what I've been watching.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Can I say what I'm watching?
Yes, please do. Also tell us, what are you reading and what are you watching?
Thankfully, I also have an accountability group, the book club. So I have to be reading a book a month. It's like homework, really. So we are reading Eat, Pray, Love. Man, I've been talking about that book. And it's week 2 or week 3 of March.
We just started 3. Week 3.
Wow.
Imagine.
Of March?
Yeah. Isn't today
March
like
long?
no, we're in the 2nd week. No, today is like the 15th.
Oh my goodness.
So it's technically the 3rd.
The 3rd week of March, guys. So we are reading Eat, Pray, Love. And then at the end of the month, we discuss it. So you can tell how much time I have. And then I've been watching. Do I want to say what I've been watching? I watch a lot of things at the same time.
Okay.
They are my go-tos when I just want to do...
Your regular shows.
When I just want to unwind. So reruns of Big Bang Theory.
Nice.
Just misbehaving. And Working Moms. I watch things that I'm relating with, around that time. And I'm also watching Divorce on Showmax. Divorce is on Showmax. The others are on Netflix.
I see.
Yeah.
I haven't watched, Big Bang Theory at least I've watched, but I haven't watched the other 2.
The other 2? Oh, the Working Moms and Divorce. Okay, Divorce is depressing. But it's interesting. They've put some comedy in there, but it's
a drama.
It's a drama.
Okay.
And I'm a fan of Jessica. She's called Bradshaw. The one who acted Sex and the City is called who?
I see. Sarah Jessica Parker.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah.
Yes, she's the one who's acting.
I
And I'm a
see.
fan. I'm a huge fan. I just always see her perspectives,
I
her
see.
point of views, her life, her dressing.
I know.
I love her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I'll definitely look them up.
Okay. So, Nyambura is here to give us a snippet of her life, or rather some small story of a section of her life, and we will be able to learn from it.
I hope so.
I'm sure we will. I have learned from it already, okay, having had the two small bits.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Nyambura, I'm not even sure I want to ask you a question. You just start.
How do I start now? So maybe for background, so the context of our podcast is usually talking about, I guess technically it's relationships. So when we were beginning our podcast, it was because we realized that so we come from a blended family. Our parents are divorced and they are remarried. But we wanted to explore what that has meant in terms of our sisterhood or siblinghood. And of course, it's impossible to look at it without thinking about how it affects our relationships as well.
Sure.
Whether with friends or with partners or romantic relationships.
Yes.
So I know when we had spoken, you were like, I don't know if I'm like a pioneer of divorce. I don't know if that's what. At least I think in our generation, I was one of the fewer people who got divorced. Not that it's something to be proud of early on. And I've found that many people usually ask my perspective. So I know that's what we were to discuss today.
That's what we want to discuss today. I do want to,
I got married young. I was 24 when I got married in 2009. I mean, now I have an understanding that it was young, but at the time I was very gung-ho that, you know, I'm old enough, I'm an adult. And technically, even before that, I had always known that I wanted to get married early. I found that it was something I aspired to. You know, you have your children early and then you're like done and you're like, So in my mind, I had a checklist. You know, you go to school, you finish your degree,
then
you get your first job, you get married.
Wow.
So I was just there checking.
You were so woke.
Was I really?
Aki, for real, you were so woke.
Okay.
Because now I'm looking at it, I'm looking, you know, backwards and I'm like, why didn't I do that? Then I was not,
That's not where you are?
No.
Yeah, so I always knew that was how the checklist was going to progress. Now, of course, the thing about it too is I'm speaking now from a point of hindsight. So there's some things I can now identify through processing, through therapy, that that kind of rush was also because of my home setup. I wanted to start my own family because I felt like I would be able to start a whole one because of how our parent dynamic had been. I was like, anyway, now I know what not to do. I know what to do. And so this is the desire for my life, and this is how life will go.
Yeah. You're the firstborn?
Yes, I am. It is important to note I am the firstborn daughter.
Yes.
Yeah. So I already felt like even in terms of responsibility, I had a lot of experience just even straight out of high school. So anyway, I got married in 2009. The person I married, we moved to Uganda immediately after the wedding. It had not always been the plan before. Like, the plan had always been to stay in Kenya and whatever, but he had an opportunity for work there, and he left like in the wedding planning period. It just so happened that my employer at the time had just opened an office in Kampala, so I asked for a transfer, and they were like, of course, no problem. Which to me also spoke to, you know,
God is working things out.
You know,
Those
this
are
is
opening
meant to
favors.
be. Yes, I'm like,
I
look
can
at God
imagine.
answering.
Goodness, but I can imagine. I mean, uprooting yourself from here to And being a new wife, okay, let's just call it new wife.
Yes,
I know.
it's
a
true.
first-time thing.
It's a first-time thing. So if I'm honest, when I first moved, it was jarring. And you know, the thing about it too is I feel like I'm very confident in myself in terms of, I'll be able to do it. Yeah, I'll hack, of course.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest that it was tough. For one, I was away from my support system in terms of my sisters, my parents, my friends. And then when I moved to Kampala, you know, initially I was so naive. Goodness.
I
thought.
Had you ever been to UG first? Even if visiting?
I had been to visit. But you know, when you're visiting, it's like different. 3-4 days, 5 days. You don't have to go to the market. No. You know, you don't have to go find like a supermarket near your area or language barrier. You don't experience it because where you are in every moment, you're with people who know you or are getting to know you. And so I was quite shocked when now I moved there and settled there. I felt like, oh, I don't speak Luganda.
No.
And I'm like,
and okay. That's the one they will mainstream.
Of course. So, I mean, I guess I didn't find it too difficult because I'm also an introvert. So I stayed indoors a lot. Okay. But those are not some of the things that you learn to navigate in a relationship because you can't also just forever be inside. I must say that over time, I made some of my closest friends, people I'm still friends with today in Kampala, but it was difficult for me. In the same breath, though, I want to say that maybe I thought that it also strengthened our relationship because now your person is your person.
Yeah, you're my only person now.
Other person now.
Your networks.
Yeah, everything was there. And I still am grateful that I had the job, so I was able to make my own networks also through like the work I was doing. But it was
it must have been
tough landing. But I also realized that a lot of my friends out of Kampala were Kenyans. So I guess you just get kind of attracted to the people who are like you or who will understand. So I found that interesting. But anyway,
I have questions though.
Please ask.
Just a few on the new wife thing.
Yeah.
Did you have standards for yourself? Like, I want to be doing A, B, C. I want to be doing this in my new house.
I mean,
did you find yourself there?
I think so, but I feel like, so me, I like homemaking things anyway. So I love to cook. I'm not so crazy about cleaning, but I enjoy like putting a home together, you know, like whether it's like furniture. And I should mention that when we moved, we didn't really have anything. Honestly, for like months.
Oh, you started from scratch?
We started from absolute scratch, like didn't have a couch. In fact, I think about people who visited us in our first apartment and sat like on a mattress that we had brought out so that people can sit. And we had like one camping chair, you know, so like basic, but for me, like, I don't know, I felt like a home is not the things, it's also like the energy, the spirit, the love, the whatever that's
the two of you make
driven. So I don't know that I had expectations or benchmarks for myself. But then remember, I was also raised by a single dad. So technically, I had been homemaking. I had been taking care of my sister, you know, responsibilities of cooking, making sure, planning, you know, like, so it didn't feel like I was adding, you know, now like as a new wife, there are more things. And also I had lived alone for maybe like 2 years before I got married. So I was like, tunaendelea tu, it's just a person that has been added. So I didn't feel pressure. I didn't feel the shift. I felt more because I moved
countries. Oh goodness.
Well, I guess also now like living with a man, and there's also now the dynamics change, but I didn't feel like in terms of wifely roles, duties.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't feel like a real shift.
That's nice.
Maybe it was more tricky for me because now it was someone else has to give input. So like maybe me, I like this carpet.
Yeah.
See, I buy the carpets. Yeah. But now, and I call him my husband. My husband was very involved. Like he wants like to pick the artwork, and I would used to be like, "Gay, okay."
Sikujua hapo.
Sikujua
I'll have
that.
to consult.
Yeah. So for me, that back and forth of, oh, you have opinions. Oh, I have to consider your opinions. Those were the things that I found like in the settling in were like, oh, okay.
I'm learning.
Yeah.
Okay, so go on.
So now I don't even remember where I've reached. Anyway,
So 1 year goes, 2
1 year
years
goes by, 2 years go by. Yeah, I mean, like maybe in our 4th year is when we started to feel the cracks. Now, I like to say I'm sensitive that there's another person whose story this is as well. So I will do the best I can to handle it with their dignity in mind as well. And also dignity for the relationship, because it wasn't just a...
Yes.
You know, so I want to say maybe in our fourth year is, and technically the first time I saw the cracks in the relationship, it wasn't even something I witnessed myself. So we did, there's a program called Ndoa.
Well, I know it.
You know Ndoa?
I'm laughing because I know it. I am the crusader.
Correct. You're the crusader of Ndoa.
Evangelist.
We'll have to talk about that one. Anyway, so Ndoa was being, at the time we were involved in Mavuno in Kampala. And so they were bringing Ndoa as a program, you know, just enriching marriages.
I know.
So
that class is called Enrich.
Yes, the class is called Enrich. So we were doing Enrich. And so for those who have an idea of what Ndoa is like or who don't, it's like a 10-week program. So at the end of the program, at the end of the 10 weeks, technically you have a retreat. And in that retreat, you're supposed to do what they call disclosure. So in disclosure, basically the idea behind it is that you're telling your partner the things that you've been hiding from them or secrets, so, you know, so that you're building from a new foundation based on the principles that you've been learning through the 10 weeks. So anyway, disclosure showed me some tricks because I learned some things and I was like, wow.
I was not ready.
Okay, I was not ready. But I want to say that that's the first time it really shook me because until that situation, I had thought we were good.
Different pages completely.
So for me, it was also the betrayal of, Haya, kumbe me, I've been thinking that we're good, but now, granted, there were some things he raised about maybe my handling of some situations that I was like, okay, there are some things there's some things I need to work on for myself as well. But I'll be honest, that was tough for me. Like, the long and short of it was infidelity. But I was like, okay, so maybe this is an opportunity to reflect, think about it. I felt maybe also in terms of my faith that it was the right thing to do, to forgive and just like work for the thing. Because also when I got into this situation, it was supposed to be a forever thing. So that is, I was like, it's going to be hard, but let's work to rebuild the trust. And I want to say in the beginning, like there was a clear effort on his part as well to show that things were changing. And I guess maybe on my part as well to think about, okay, how can I be more supportive or more available or, you know, those kinds of things. Even though sometimes I was like, those are also excuses, but I was like, also I hear you. So if this is what we need to be okay, let's let's work on it. If I'm honest, I feel like maybe after that, things changed. Now, again, like I'm saying, hindsight also helps you understand some things. I think there was a freedom with him speaking his truth that I feel like allowed him to be like, oh, okay, so this can be a thing. And so after that, like shortly after, like just disintegration, complete and utter disintegration. And I must say that I really believed that I should work on the relationship. Now, I was not telling anyone what was going on.
No.
Maybe just a few of our close friends,
Have
maybe
you guys,
through Ndoa.
have you been given a group? Have you
So
been
yeah,
put
we
in a
have
group?
groups in Ndoa. Those are the people who are kind of helping us. And this group technically had been a good group of friends before. So even the guys
you guys
had,
went through Ndoa pamoja?
yes.
Okay.
So the guys, actually, it started with the guys coming together to read this book called Courageous. And then that's how the wives became friends. But that was kind of like our community. And they were supportive through and through, but now I have my own, I feel like, now how do I start? Like, I think sometimes a person's responsibility is purely their own. You can't make someone make decisions. You can advise them
Even
and say,
if
you know
you're
what?
in an accountability group.
Yeah, even if you're in an accountability group and you're like, yo, my guy, you should not be doing X, Y, Z. Like, okay, you can say that, but really responsibility stops with an individual. So I must say that there were some ups and downs. In the end, I had to speak to someone, but I spoke to his parents. I guess because they were in the same country, I felt like they knew what was happening, or they were aware, because I would let them know and be like, hey, mi sasa, mi sijaona mtu for 2 days. So therefore, because now it comes to that place where it's like, you can't hide for a person anymore. Because if anything happens, you're also responsible. So, and I have to say they were supportive as well, as much as you can be, with it also being your child. But yeah, at some point I just felt like, okay, now I don't know what's happening. We did go to counseling. Honestly, that didn't work. So we ended up separated. I want to say it was about 6 years into our marriage. So we separated for 3 months, 3-4 months. I moved back to Nairobi. So now, at that point, things had gotten so thick that now I involved my family. And I was like, here now I can't handle by myself. I think by the time we were in therapy, I had at least told my sisters. I had not told my parents yet. So they knew that things are thick. They didn't know the extent of the thickness, but I think now when I decided that I was just going to come home, is when now I told them the real situation kwa ground.
Sasa nimerudi home.
Sasa nimejaribu. Actually, where I've reached, it is the end of my rope. And I think everyone was rather understanding, but I was here for 3 months. He came, he was like, please forgive me, let's try work this out again. Again.
You packed your bags.
I was like, I don't know that it's the best idea, but this is what I need to do to be okay with my decision. So I went back. And it was tough also because in going back, I was determined to try to, you can go back to complain the whole time, or go back to be like, I even knew.
You have to have a certain
you're showing me,
of the mind.
So by the time you're going back, you have to be like, yeah, I'm going, but I'm going to actually try to work on things, which was difficult. But in the end, 3-4 months down later, like nothing had changed. So now I left for good. That is the high-level
Executive
chronological
summary.
executive summary.
Report.
Exactly. Hey, yeah. So so I moved back 7 years after the marriage. Yeah.
Wow, your suitcases, everything. Or
So
you just came and started
technically,
afresh?
I came and started afresh, if I'm honest. I felt like I needed the fresh start. So I literally just left with my clothes. The same way I went to Kampala with just like a few suitcases. That's the way I came back, which was hard also. But yeah, I mean, I sometimes think about like all the wedding gifts that I had in a store somewhere that I was just like, actually, I cannot be bothered. Like, Godspeed. Whatever happens, happens. Sasa, I am going with God. He will sort me out in the future. So, yeah, I left with just my suitcases.
Wow. I'm so sorry for that.
Yeah.
Now,
Tell
this is
me.
where for me the journey, no, this is now the story. Like I told you now, the show I'm watching, now this is the beginning of where I really want you to now, you know, hindsight, do all that going back. So you've come back to Nairobi, you've come back home. You rented your own space?
No.
You went home.
So this is the thing, yeah. I think a lot of people I talk to who are like, oh, I'm in a tough situation. I'm like, living a marriage is also not easy. Even when you're the one who has made the decision. By the way, let me be very clear. I think sometimes people imagine that it's only difficult for the person who's left in that situation. No, for me, if you can imagine, I had been building a home for 7 years. I worked for a family business, his family business. Like, so I had shifted my career. There's so many, I think the end of a marriage is not so much even just the marriage. It's also the death of relationship, yes, but it's also the death of a future, an ambition. Like the rest of your life had been planned with another person in mind. Even what you have been building towards, I mean, like our finances were so enmeshed, entrenched. You know, I was making decisions based on having a partner. You know, there's so many things included in the end of who you are as a person, the things you're prioritizing as well. So me making the decision to come home was not easy. If you can imagine, I haven't been in Nairobi for 7 years and things are changing. People are changing. Thankfully, I was still pretty close with like my inner circle of friends that we had tried to keep in touch. Maybe didn't see each other as much. Thank God WhatsApp came in those years that I was away. But before that, you can imagine like the costs of calling and SMSing was so expensive. I didn't see people often. But when I moved back, now see, I'd left everything I had built. I had a business that I was running. I had customers.
Yeah, you had. There's a day I actually looked for you. You were selling Nyamu bites, were you?
Selling cakes.
Yes.
I had started a cake business, so I gave up everything. Now I was coming to start. If you imagine how you are when you leave your parents' house, that is how I came back. I had a bit of savings, but that was it. So how am I renting an apartment? I have no job. The business I was running, I have left behind. I have scratch. So I went to my mother's house, which is also so difficult. This is something people don't talk about. It's moving back home as an adult is also challenging because you're used to your independence, your freedom. You know, like sometimes my mom would call me and be like, what time are you coming home? And I'd be like, Mom, when I was a whole wife in Kampala, did you used to ask me if I've gotten home? You know, like, but I also understand that once you're a parent, you're a parent. So the fact that I was under her roof meant, but it was really difficult. So I had to come and be like, okay, am I going to start baking in Nairobi as well? Where do I find the market? How do I tell people I'm here? You know, so I moved first to my mom's house, and then I moved in with my sister after. It was not until maybe a year and a half of me being back that I actually got my own spot. Yeah.
Wow.
But it was tough.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was tough.
So how are you navigating the specific now, you know, are you breaking down? Are you overwhelmed with sadness? Were you, you know?
So I want to say, I think because the breakdown of the marriage had been happening for quite a while, there are some aspects with which I had settled in myself. By the time I was leaving, in some aspects of grief in terms of the relationship, I feel like I had been mourning it for a long time, even while I was in it. So by the time I was like, sasa basi sinivo, I was like, I've accepted that. Whatever I could do, whatever, like I have reached the end of myself in trying to make this thing work. Now I have left it. But that doesn't end there. So when now I came back, of course, there's like the things of having to rely on people, which makes you sad. Sometimes, of course, you can miss a person also who has been mean to you.
Yeah.
Because there's something that was there as well. It's hard when you miss a friendship also. So I feel like there's some days you're like, yes, I've got this, you can do this. But I found that I struggled a lot with social anxiety especially. Because also when you've been known as someone's wife for so many years, everywhere you go, people pair you with that person. So it's like, hi, oh my gosh, you're in Nairobi. How's Nani? Oh, yeah. So
And
those
you
are
have
now,
to go.
and if I'm honest, in the beginning,
so
I used to
weird.
lie. I used to be
Yeah.
like, oh, he's fine.
Yeah.
Because I thought that would stop
The question.
the conversation. But you know what happens is people ask the next question, hey, and he didn't come with you? Or, and
is he doing?
and now
What
you
is he
feel
up
that
to?
anxiety, like your
Oh,
heart is just
goodness.
beating every time. So it wasn't even until quite a while that I was like, actually, I have to stop lying and just be honest and point blank. And I found that the thing that I had feared was like people will judge me, or, you know, it's difficult or navigate. I found that when I started being honest with people, people are actually quite compassionate.
No.
Also very shocked. So I think sometimes the shock is also a good thing because they don't know what to say next.
Yeah.
So now when you're like, hi, how's Nani? I'll be like, that story died. We are no longer together. You find someone being like, oh,
I did not see that coming.
and then
So
people
that's
will,
it.
a lot of times people will be encouraging and be like, yeah, but are you well? Or, you know, I'll be praying for you, or that's unfortunate. But of course, there are those other ones who are like, but did you work on it? Or, you know, like those kinds of things. So initially you're dealing with an identity shift because you've been a wife and you have been connected to someone for so long. So there's that you're mourning. You're mourning the relationship that used to happen. Or there's some things like inside jokes.
Honestly.
Then you're like, the only person who
Your
can
friend-
understand this thing is this person. But
Yeah.
I do not want to, you know, so there are various losses, you know. I think for me, moving back meant a breakup with so many other things. I have friends who have struggled with, like, you know, maybe on Sundays you used to do specific things together and that kind of thing. I think for me, the change in geographical location already made such a harsh change or breakup in that sense that I was like, I can't even miss those things. Because even if I feel like if I had stayed in Kampala, it would have been more difficult because you're seeing the places you used to go. So I think that harsh break.
Stop, and it was now
Yeah, it was
Nairobi
now
and
like
a
fresh start. But yeah, it's I think it's ups and downs. And you know, when you're saying, was it just that time? I think, to be honest, I feel like you can be done with that thing and still have moments way later that you're like,
that
oh,
haunt you,
yeah,
or pull
it's
you
like
back.
either pull you back or sometimes make you sad, or so sometimes it's not, I mean, the heaviness is in that immediate season, but then there are other times you'll be like, hey, yenyewe. Just a random trigger.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, and you'll be like, what? Na nimeishi, you know, or those kinds of things, yeah.
So, why this was, of course, so intriguing and so interesting for me, or rather why I wanted us to talk about it, is because I feel like I can actually think of several people that I would have wanted to call for this same recording or episode, for them to just give their aspect of from a young woman's perspective. Because there are all these comments about, this generation cannot stay, do not know kuvumilia and all that. You said 6 years, 7 years. And in my head, I'm like, okay, how much time is, like you vumiliaed for how long? You waited for how long? Or you fought for how long? And when did it feel, it's okay. When did you feel that validation? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Okay. If I'm honest, I think that the challenge comes when you're seeking that validation externally, because you will realize that you'll be struggling alone.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I think going into my marriage, I was determined for it to work out. Now, remember, I'm telling you, I've come from a parent situation where they are divorced. And there's one thing I was like, I will not be a statistic. I do not want to be that child who they're like, in any case, what do you expect? Because her parents are also divorced. So I was ultra determined
for it to work.
Because of that, I want to say also because of my faith. I think growing up with divorced parents who are in the church, and the church would be very clear about God hates divorce.
Yeah.
We talk about this with my sisters in the podcast, how people would come to us and be like, oh, your parents, they are doing the thing that God hates,
So that you do what they're coming to tell you girls.
Anyway, those are my fights with the church are also a different situation.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think because of that, I was adamant. Now, the first time I told people what was going on, I was surprised even women in the church, older women, aunties being like, here too.
Oh.
Only that. And I remember my disillusionment to be like, oh, okay, so this is clearly a thing that happens, that people just are like,
it's all right.
It's all right. But I was like, that's also unfair, because nobody tells you to expect this thing. When we're at bridal showers, people are not telling you, me, I've been cheated on X number of times and I've forgiven Y number of times. And this is the side child, that's the side family. This is, those, I think the clear picture was not being painted. So I remember being very disillusioned first that, oh, this is a vumilia thing. I didn't know. So it made me feel crazy for expecting better for myself. But then I guess this is where now therapy comes in, because I had to process some of those things for myself to say, okay, if I believe that God hates divorce from a faith perspective, why am I not capable of believing that he also gives us a way out in the specific situation that I am in? Why am I choosing to believe him at his word on one thing and not the other? So higher, that is that one processing. And then it's like, okay, so but you vumilia, but what does that mean for you?
And until
health-wise,
when?
until when? Yeah, so even by the time I was deciding to leave, it was because now I was getting to the place where I would sleep, I would wake up and I'd be like, God, you didn't come in the night. Why? I'm tired. I want to rest.
Yeah.
And then I start to be like, surely is that your plan for me as your child, when you say that you have good plans for me to prosper me? Is this your plan?
Is this good?
Because those were now my prayers. I'm like, I'm not understanding who you say you are versus what is happening. I'm not. Make it make sense. Yeah. So on the one hand, there's some people who will tell you I've humiliated too long. There's some other people who are like, you had more vumilia in you. I think at the end of the day, it comes to your personal decisions. So for me, and I also say it's not a decision I arrived to carelessly. I don't think anyone ever just leaves a marriage carelessly. I mean, I hope not anyway. Yeah, it's something that you have thought through. For me, prayerfully considered. Yeah, but the day I was like, aha, it is time. It was time. And I usually say, that day you can leave even with a handbag.
And you just go.
And you go. But I don't know that it's a generational thing. I feel like every situation is different. There's some people I will talk to and I'll be like, why aren't you fighting for your marriage? There's some people, I don't believe there's a one size fits all. I don't believe that there's a Vumilia point where it's too much or too little. I think people are different. I think individuals are different. I think situations are different. I mean, when your health is at risk or like even in an abusive relationship, I don't, like, how do you, and I think it's also like as a society, we've created like an axis of now, if it's the beating, levels. Please. Here immediately.
But it's also for different people. Imagine there are people who, if it's just beating.
Exactly. You're right. So that's why I'm like, if you rely on this societal standard or even religious or church standard, I mean, you can make decisions, but they will be not your own. At some point, then now it has to be me, myself, the way I understand myself, the way I understand my partner, the way I have seen the pattern of behavior or what is happening. Is change possible? And for me, therapy is what helped me understand that. Also, if someone has a habit, do you know how long it takes for someone to change a habit? And they have to be deliberately wanting to. So if someone does not want to change already, because those were some of the battles I was having, I'd be like, God, I believe you change people. I believe in a God that changes people. That's a core part of my faith. Why aren't you changing this person? But then it had to be for me to realize, also, God doesn't force you to change. You have to be in surrender. It has to be that you want. Yeah? You confess. You believe. And then he transforms. So it's not like anyway, I feel like I have so many tangents.
Magic wand. And you change.
It doesn't work that way.
Okay. So for me, it's just that part of normalizing the whole, you come tell me, oh yeah, no, we went our separate ways. I'm like, what? You see, we don't take it as that. We're all busy, judging. And wow.
Yeah. So I think it's difficult, but the thing about it is I also don't feel society will change. So I don't know that you'll ever get, maybe people are more empathetic. I feel like in the time since I moved back, even you'll see like churches, like chapel have divorce care. Like people are being more aware that you can't just be like, divorce is a sin. Full stop. There are real lives that are being impacted day to day by this situation. Whatever the reason may be, whatever happens in everyone's relationship, I feel like people are a bit more empathetic, but I don't think that expecting society to change their view on you didn't fight enough or vumilia or whatever. So sometimes I'm usually like, you also have to be okay with going against the grain, because no one will pat you on the back. Sometimes even if you tell them what happened, people will be like, but was he taking care of the home? It doesn't matter. For some people, like everyone's standard is different. So sometimes I feel like going into it, just maintaining the expectation that people will not understand. So it has to come from within, that you're at peace with your decision. You're okay with the outcome, whatever it is. You may be okay to lose some friends, because there are some people who will struggle to be associated with a divorced person. Or there are some people who will only see you as a divorced person. There are some people who their husbands will worry that their wife is hanging out with a divorced woman, so maybe she's putting things in her head, or so there's so many other things on this other side as well, that I'm like, if you're not at peace with yourself, whether that's through your faith or whatever it is, the expectation of people understanding, I think, is wrong. We can hope that they have empathy, compassion, but
that's it. Wow. Let me just ask you this, because the thing about self-awareness is coming to my mind a lot. Do you feel like it played any role, just you being self-aware as Nyambura, who I am, throughout the whole process?
I would say it played a role, but I don't know that I was self-aware as self-aware then. I think it's also like a work in progress. I think it's, for me, being in therapy, in processing, why would I not leave someone who treats me badly? That level of self-awareness, that now has nothing to do with them or their behavior. It is me. Yeah. Wow. So it's in processing that I can be like, oh, okay, this is from here. And maybe this insecurity is from here. And in understanding that, then I can be like, okay, so what boundaries do I want to put to protect myself? Now, even still, I would move from that point and be like, okay, now I know some things about myself. But then later in life, you discover that, oh, okay, I guess I hadn't processed this other thing. And I have been in relationship after. And I always say that, people imagine that you heal from a divorce and then inaisha hapo. Now, if you move on to another relationship, you're now healed. But I think someone will bring up triggers in you that you did not even know are still sitting there, or you might think you've processed through some things, and then someone will say something and you'll be like, why am I so upset about this thing? And then it has to be like, oh, this is not about this person. Self-awareness. Now you have to dig deep again and be like, okay, where is this coming from? Is it something I haven't dealt with? So I think it's an evolving of self-awareness. I really believe in therapy and that level of understanding, what am I bringing into this situation, or where are my triggers in this situation? How much of what I'm reading into this situation is about me versus about this person, about a previous hurt, about a wound that I haven't healed. So I think it played a part in some of my tough decision making, for sure, but I think it's a work in progress. I think always learning yourself, always digging deep, always understanding as things come up is where you need to be in life.
Okay, most probably the last question. The whole matrix of, okay, religion, Nyambura now. Are you a full divorcee? Like, you guys have gone through the whole process?
The legal process is complete.
Wow, how hard was it?
It wasn't very difficult for me, I must say. Okay. I waited a while to file. So I think we started the process maybe 2 years after the final separation. I did it by myself, and I'm very grateful that he was gracious enough to accord me that, because that was my request. So it was uncontested. So I feel like in that sense I was... and
you did it here?
And I did it here. So we got married here. Kenya. Technically you're supposed to do it where your residence, where you have been residing. But now I had moved back here, so it was easier to file here. So it does take a long time. And of course, because of the time, it was still like bringing up old things, having to discuss with your lawyer, process those things again. It was tough. I'm still grateful that I was able to do it alone, because then I don't think it was as, I think having a contested or like back and forth in court can also be tough. So it took as long as it took. I think the documentation came out maybe a year and a half after.
Since you started.
Yeah, but I wasn't also in a rush to... I guess you can expedite, or you can, depending on who your lawyer is, but I think these these things take as much time as they do. So yeah, it was finalized.
Depends on where the other person is also.
Yeah,
so
it was finalized
the
years
question
ago.
was in the matrix of religion, divorcee now, and Nyambura, and where are you? Are you moving on? Are you hopeful? Are you still believing in these things?
Hey, that's so in terms of, maybe let me start with religion. That's the big one. So I see it more as faith. So in terms of my faith, I think, to be honest, I don't know that I would have made it through this thing without my belief in Jesus. I think that's his faithfulness and grace. I think the word I underline the most is grace is sufficient. His grace is sufficient regardless. Now, I had mentioned before, me, I have fights with his children. God's children. Yeesh. So initially, even when I moved back, I didn't go to church for a long time because I felt judged. Now, if I'm honest, I think those are also some things you put on yourself. I don't know that everyone is judging you. Maybe if you feel that you are raised in this situation where people spoke this way about this situation, you might feel like people are judging you. But like I said, I think the church has moved to recognize that these things are happening and making it available for people to have the resources they need. I don't know that I'm willing to be a participant in those. Maybe I'm still scarred in some senses. I think there's a responsibility they have to also hold people accountable for their behavior, that sometimes I feel like we push forgiveness, we don't push accountability from the position of the church. That's a whole different matter. But also, I'm aware that there's some people who don't believe that you should move on after being divorced. I've had some really difficult conversation, even with family members. I have moved on in the past. Currently, I'm single, but again, that ends up being a situation where you have to be secure in yourself, your peace, your relationship with Christ, if that's a factor. A lot of churches don't marry divorcees also, so if you do choose to go ahead to that step, you would have to, I don't know, either go to a new church or do an AG situation. So I feel like the work is being done to understand more and be more compassionate and empathetic. I feel like I said, the grace is sufficient. Maybe it's finding the community that will also be as gracious, because it's difficult to be going through these things and still having to bear the weight of people's judgment and expectations. So I feel like the church has its role to play. I think me, in my security personally, in my relationship with Christ, that is the thing that I go to first before what the church will say, what the pastors, what religion as a movement would do. So if my personal conviction, I'm feeling at peace, that's the most important thing.
Parting shots.
Parting shots.
For young women like ourselves.
Are we still young?
Please, by the way, I am young.
We're young for life.
I am young.
I get it. Yeah.
For young women like ourselves who could be either, because honestly, I can think of maybe 5 that I know that could be in this situation. Whether, whichever reason, but now they're out of it, they're ashamed, going through the whole struggle of, no, who am I?
Adjusting identity.
Yes, adjusting, trying to, and you see, now yours has, now, the people I know don't have the, I'll call it, is it a benefit? Can I use it as a benefit, or looking at it as a positive thing? The whole geographical thing. We wish we could just go to another
place.
No, we don't have the luxury rather of moving from one location to another. So you're trying to be somebody else, or you're trying to move on, or it's redoing what? It's not recreating, but it's
like, basically starting from scratch. I don't know that I have precise advice. I also say that, or maybe let me premise this by saying every situation is different. So like for me, I didn't have children, which I think also makes things infinitely more complicated in some situations. The number one point of advice I would say is go to therapy, even if you can do at least 3 sessions, because I think that will put you in the frame of mind to understand how to process it for yourself, how to process it in line with the other people who are affected by it, and maybe also how to set boundaries on who needs to know how much, when, how comfortable you are speaking about things or not. Because I think a lot of why you also cower or shelter yourself is not being sure if you say something, how someone will receive it. I think therapy will also help you to understand that it's nobody else's business or decision but your own. I think for me, the biggest takeaway was I stopped caring what people think. At least in relation to that matter, because I was like, at the end of the day, in that specific time and space, it was just me. Yeah, so you cannot understand, unless you have been in my shoes, the reason why, how things are going, why I'm making decisions the way I am. But I think therapy will also help you to understand and name the emotion, the feeling, and make sure that you're not sitting in it. Another thing I say is find healthy coping mechanisms, because to imagine that you will be okay, just...
Are they there? Healthy coping
I don't know, me, I go to the gym, you know.
Yeah, that's
I think maybe, and also as a person of faith, I think for me, maybe also praying or like reading or talking to someone who I'm like, because there are also times you cannot pray for yourself, or your relationship with God is affected by the way things have panned out. But maybe it's like hanging out with a friend for a coffee, or finding the things that are important to you, whether it's a quiet space, going to a movie, or, you know, buying yourself flowers, finding things that help you deal with that outlet, or even just like having a good cry. People underestimate the value of, oh, today is one of those days. There are times I've had to park on the side of the road and just be like, I guess it's happening. And
you just cry.
Yeah, let all of it out. So I think being okay with feeling the feelings. I think a lot of the times people block, or you're like, I don't have time for that now.
Always quickly want to move on.
Oh, you want to move on. Me, I'm like, ride the wave, because if you don't, it catches up with you as well. So I don't know that that's helpful advice. I would say therapy, number one, because it will help you figure out yourself.
Naming the emotions.
Your boundaries, name the emotions, feel the emotions, and have some healthy
coping mechanisms, guys.
Mechanisms, if that's what you're going through. I feel like for me, community was also really important. It didn't have to be big. So but like people who will be there for you, you know, when you're like, I'm having a hard day, I don't know what to do. Sometimes you just need someone to sit with you in silence. Sometimes you need someone to give you space. Sometimes you want to express anger. So maybe it's to take you to a junkyard with a stick, and you can hit some things that release that, you know, whatever it is.
I've seen it in working moms. They actually have, you see, instead of darts, they throw axes to like a wooden board.
To be honest, so nice. I feel like Nairobi needs one of those kind of, you know, like a thing that you release all that axe throwing and whatever, you know, because sometimes you do need to have like a good shout, even without people thinking you're mad or, you know, so... Yeah,
I thought that was really nice and funny.
So I guess we need some of those in Nairobi.
We do, by the way.
Yeah.
Business opportunity.
Pitch, trademark, in case. If you come up with it, we can be like, hiyo tulikuwa tumesema kwa tumefikiria. Exactly.
Thank you so much for coming, Nyambura.
I hope it was
Oh my God.
impactful or helpful.
A lot.
Yeah.
It was good. Right, guys, right? Thank you so much for watching and for listening. As usual, like, comment, share, watch or listen OK Kiasi.
Yes,
Please
listen.
look for OK Kiasi right there on YouTube.
Well, we're not a video. We're on YouTube, yes,
yeah.
but it's a fully audio podcast.
Yeah.
So, but everywhere you find your podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, we're there also.
I can vouch for them. It's lovely. I've listened to about either 2 or 3 of your episodes, and it was so interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming, for watching, and for listening. Have a good one.